Last night, you heard it again. Not loud, not chaotic, just one bird chirping outside your window, then another pause. Then the same chirp at the exact same interval, over and over. Too consistent to ignore, too precise to feel natural, and the strange part. The longer you listened, the more it started to feel like it wasn't random at all. At first, you probably brushed it off. Birds chirp, that's normal. But this wasn't the usual scattered noise of morning or evening. This was different. Measured, repeated, almost like a signal, and once your brain locked onto that pattern, it didn't let go. Here's what most people don't realize: when something repeats with near-perfect timing, your mind stops hearing it as sound and starts interpreting it as intent. And this is where it gets interesting. The first thing you notice is the rhythm. It's not chaotic like natural bird calls usually are. It's spaced, predictable. The same gap, the same tone, again and again. Your brain is built to detect patterns. It's how you make sense of the world, but when a pattern is too perfect, it stands out. Psychologically, your mind starts asking a question: why is it so consistent? Birds can repeat calls for communication or mating, but they rarely stick to exact intervals for long. So when they do, your brain flags it as something worth paying attention to. And that's where the unease begins, but that's not the real reason it stayed with you. The second thing is anticipation. After hearing it a few times, you start waiting for the next chirp. You don't even realize it at first, but your mind starts predicting the exact moment it will happen again. And when it does, right on time, it reinforces the pattern. This is a form of temporal conditioning. Your brain syncs with the rhythm. It begins to expect it, and once expectation forms, the sound becomes harder to ignore. It's no longer background noise. It's an event, something you're tracking, something you're involved in. Here's what most people don't realize: once your brain starts predicting something, it treats it as more important than it actually is. The third thing is isolation. It's not surrounded by other sounds, no wind, no distant chatter, just that single chirp repeating. This is where contrast comes in again. When a single sound exists in isolation, it feels amplified. Even if it's quiet, your brain focuses on it because there's nothing else competing for attention. And in that silence, the repetition feels stronger, more deliberate, almost like it's meant to stand out. This is where it starts to feel personal. The fourth thing is direction. You might not be able to see the bird clearly, but you know where it's coming from. Outside your window, somewhere close, and that proximity matters. Sound behaves differently when it's near. It feels more immediate, more present. Your brain interprets nearby repeated sounds as more relevant, more urgent, even if it's harmless. And when something repeats that close to you, your awareness sharpens. You listen more carefully. You start trying to locate it exactly. But that's not the real reason it unsettles you. The fifth thing is persistence. It doesn't stop after a few seconds. It keeps going, longer than it should. Most natural sounds fade or change, but this one stays the same. That consistency over time is what makes it feel intentional. Scientifically, some birds do repeat calls for extended periods, especially in low-light conditions or when marking territory. But they usually vary slightly: pitch, timing, intensity. When those variations are missing, your brain notices. It starts to question it. And unanswered questions create tension. This is where it gets interesting, because now you're not just hearing it. You're analyzing it. The sixth thing is your environment. At night, your senses shift. Your vision becomes less reliable, so your hearing takes over. That's why repeated sounds feel stronger after dark. Your brain depends on them more. It uses them to build a sense of space and safety. So when a sound repeats too precisely, it disrupts that balance. It feels out of place, not because it is, but because your brain isn't used to that level of consistency in nature. Here's what most people don't realize. At night, your brain is more sensitive to patterns that don't quite fit. The seventh thing is your reaction. You might notice yourself becoming still, listening more closely, maybe even holding your breath for a second, waiting for the next chirp. That's your body responding before your mind fully understands why. It's a subtle alertness, not fear exactly, but something close to it. a readiness. Because repetition like that can signal something important in nature. And your brain hasn't fully ruled that out, but that's not the most important part. The eighth thing is memory. After it stops, it doesn't leave you. You keep thinking about it, replaying the rhythm in your head, trying to recall exactly how consistent it was. Was it perfectly timed? Or just close enough to feel that way? Your brain tries to resolve it, but it can't. And that unresolved pattern sticks, because your mind prefers closure. And when it doesn't get it, it keeps the question open. This is where it gets deeper. Because now, the next time you hear a bird at night, you don't hear it the same way. You listen for the pattern, you check the timing, you wait for repetition. And that changes everything. The ninth thing is meaning. Humans are wired to assign meaning to repeated signals. It's how we interpret language, warnings, communication. So when something in the natural world starts to resemble a signal, your brain leans into that idea. Not because it's true, but because it's familiar. A repeated chirp starts to feel like a message. Even if you know logically that it is, that feeling doesn't come from the bird. It comes from you, and then comes the final realization. It was never really about the sound. It was about what happens when repetition becomes predictable, but not fully explainable. Because in that moment, your brain is caught between two things. Understanding and uncertainty. You recognize the pattern, but you don't fully understand why it's so precise. And that gap, that small space between recognition and explanation, that's where the tension lives. That's what made it feel different. That's why it stayed with you. Not because something unusual was happening outside your window, but because something shifted inside your perception. A simple sound became a pattern became a question. And that question didn't have a clear answer. So the next time you hear a bird repeating the same call over and over, at the exact same interval, don't ignore it too quickly. Not because it means something hidden is trying to reach you, but because it reveals how your mind reacts when something feels almost, but not quite, explainable. And once you notice that, you start hearing it differently, every repetition, every pause, every pattern. If you've ever experienced that moment, where a simple sound became something you couldn't stop focusing on, something that felt just a little too precise to be random, share it. Because the more you pay attention to these patterns, the more you realize. Sometimes it's not the sound that's unusual. It's the way your mind refuses to let it go.